Hi and welcome to cgboomer.com. My name is Hans Erickson, and today we're going to be going into day 6 of my work in progress for my logo and web header. And we're going to be doing part 2 of making my record player that will be playing my Blender record. So let's proceed just as quickly as possible. Today what I've planned is we're going to finish all the tweaking on all of the meshes or objects that we've created so far, with the exception of the base, which will take an entire tutorial in itself. But we're going to start right out by working with the hinges, finishing them up because they are not complete yet, so let's get started on that. Let's go into rear view by hitting Control 1 on our new pad here. That'll take us into a rear view here, and we're going to zoom in on those hinges. I think the one thing that we need to do is let's get out of that other view there. What do we have in this view here? Let's take all our hinges and hinge objects, and we're going to move those to layer 1. Then we're going to go over here and we're going to select the lid, the base, move that all over to that second layer, take the turntable and move it over to the second layer, so that we're working on the hinges all by themselves, so that we have a good clear view. Now selecting the cylinder, we're going to, there we go, we're going to go into edit mode. We're going to deselect everything and then box select this one side here. I'll zoom in a little bit here, and we're going to extrude on the x-axis just a little bit. We don't want to, well, we want to go about that far. What we got to do is make the end cap for the cylinder, and then we're going to extrude again on the x-axis, and again not very far, probably about like EA. I'm going to just spin around a little bit, and then we're going to bring it in by hitting S. We're going to extrude one more time on the x-axis, bring it out just a tiny bit. Again, size it in by hitting S and bring it in to just about there. Then by hitting extrude and then just right clicking, we're going to get right out of it. And then we're going to, now all I've got is a ring of vertices that are hanging over the other vertices. If I hit G and move it around, you can see they're still stuck there. So I'm going to come over here and I am going to hit, if I find it, merge at center, and it's remove the other vertices. I'm going to zoom in. Let me get out of wireframe mode here. And now I am blessed with a bunch of triangles that I do not want. So I'm going to go into face mode real quick and just select 2 triangles and hit F, and now I've merged them into a quad. Remember, we don't want any triangles in our mesh, so just continue to go around and get rid of all those triangles. And then going back into vertex mode, I'm just going to grab that one vertex and I'm going to G, X, and just move it out ever so slightly right about there. And now I've got a nice rounded cap for my cylinder. Okay, now that isn't doing me any good right in that location there. I need to do the same thing on the other side, but that is just a little more work of what I want to do. So I'm going to get firmly well, let me do this. I'm going to select this vertex and this vertex, and I want to center my cursor right between there by hitting Shift S, cursor to selected. Now my cursor is right between those two marks, and now I'm going to change my pivot from median point to 3D cursor. I'm going to deselect everything, go back into wireframe, box select everything over here, go Shift D to duplicate, and then just escape right out of it. And again, I've got a whole set of vertices stuck right there. Now I'm going to hit S, X, 1, and a minus sign. And that has taken that and I've scaled it on the x-axis over one time from here. And what it does is it duplicates everything over there. So I don't have to do all that extra work. I'm going to zoom in here and make sure that these vertices are pretty much touching the other vertices, which I can see they are. So now I'm going to select everything, and right here where it says remove doubles, I'm going to hit it, and you can see up here where it's removing all those extra vertices because I had vertices stacked on top of other vertices. Now I've got a solid mesh, and my cylinder is pretty well complete. I'm going to change back into median point, and I'm going to start adding some loops, because now what I want to do is I want to make, right now if I were to get into this view here, my end caps are right here, but I have no grooves or anything for my hinge cylinder, so we want to be making it. So I'm going to go back into wireframe mode, and I'm going to add 3 loop cuts in here. And I'm going to go Control R, scroll up 2 times on my mouse wheel so I get 3 loop cuts, enter, and I'm done there. I'm going to add 1 more loop cut here, oops, right there, and 1 more loop cut right there. And actually I'm going to back step here. By Control Z, I'm going to add 2 loop cuts in there, Control R, 2 loop cuts right there, and Control R, 2 loop cuts right here. Now I'm going to continue on, and in between each one of these areas here, I'm going to add 2 more loop cuts. And I pretty well got things straightened up the way that I want. Now this right here is going to be, this line right here is going to be where my cylinder hits its groove. Now if I was to grab this right here and begin to scale it down, you can see what's going to happen. It's going to deform rather badly. So if I go ahead and hit these 2 loops, Alt and left click, then Shift Alt left click here, and I'm going to scale them on the x-axis. I'm going to move that right out to real close to that edge. I'm going to do the same thing here. S and X, and scale them right in, just about to where they're pretty well even there. Then again, choosing this loop and this loop, whoops, and scaling on the x-axis. Moving over and do it one more time here. take these and shift right click for there and scale on the x-axis, and we'll move those pretty close to there. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Alt right click, Shift Alt right click, S and X, and scale, and go down to the other end here, grab this one, this loop, and that loop, scale and x-axis, and move that right in like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Actually, I'm not as even there as I should, so let's go S, X, and move those back just a little bit. Okay, now I want to start making my grooves. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to grab a loop. I'm going to grab the center loop between here, the two that I just scaled towards it, hitting Alt, right click, and I'm just going to S and scale them right down. And I'm going to kind of use this where the two hinges are as my guide. I'm just going to scale them down to that point. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Scale this right down and grab this one and scale that right down. Do this one last time, or excuse me, two more times. Alt right click and scale it down, and Alt right click and scale that one down. Alright, now if I was to kind of back up a little bit and go into solid view, you can see that I've got some, it almost looks like I've got a pin going through there, and I've kind of got my grooves going. However, I'm still blessed with a very round looking, or very octagonal looking hinge pin. So two things that we can do. One is we can hit shading smooth, and that helps some. We're not quite there yet though, because it still looks octagonal. So, and I got a feeling some of my normals might be a little off. We'll be able to find out real quick here, because I'm going to go over here, I'm going to add a modifier, multi-resolution, do optimal display, and I'm going to subdivide it twice. And you can see right in here I've got some distortions, and that's because some of my normals are going the wrong direction. And you also notice this has kind of gone a little kaplooey. It kind of looks like a string of beads right now, but we're going to correct all that here real soon. So I'm going to slip back into this mode here. I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to hit there we go, recalculate all the normals, or I could have hit Control N. Now let me slip back in, and you can see I got rid of those nasty distortions. That means all the faces are now facing in the right direction. Okay, let's continue on and fix this a little bit more. I'm going to come in here, and I need to narrow up those gaps quite a bit. So if I take this and this right here, those two loops, I'm going to hit S sub X, oops, X, I hit Z, and I'm going to scale those in very close. Not touching, but very close. I'm going to do the same thing here, Alt and scale those right in, oops, on the X-axis. Don't forget to hit the X. Come back over here, Alt and Shift Alt, and scale those on the X-axis. Move those right in, and then come over here, Alt and Shift Alt. Scale these in on the X-axis. You'll see a lot of repetition in what I'm doing here. That's what modeling is all about. It's taking the same tools that you had learned and utilizing them over and over and over again. S and X, and scale those right in. And you see I had missed a vertex there, so let's step back, Control Z, and Shift Alt and S and on the X, and scale that right in. And now if we slip out into, you can see it's looking somewhat better. But now we're going to have to add a couple edge loops to control this nasty deformation there. And so we're going to do that again by adding 2 edge loops in. Again, Control R, 2 edge loops there. And then we're going to go S to scale them out on the X-axis to probably right about there. And we're going to add one Control R loop here and just kind of slide it over to right about there. Now let's just check and see what that's done. And you can see that has improved it tremendously. There's about a limit that we're going to be able to go in sliding these, so we're going to go G sub X, and slide that over to about there. Hit this one and this one, and S, X, and slide that right over to about there. And that's just about as good as we're going to get for right now. Actually, that does not look too bad at all. By the time we get textured and everything in there, and you also got to remember, nobody's going to be getting right up here and look. In fact, it's going to be at the back, but if anybody did turn around, if we showed another view, it actually does not look bad at all. So we're going to repeat that process on the rest of the loops here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the recorder while I'm doing that, so that we can conserve a little bit of recording time, and because it's just a repetition of everything that we've done before. Okay, you can see that it really does not look all that bad. The one thing I did forget though is I wanted to go ahead and mark the seams on this before it got too complicated. Now I'm going to show you why here in just about 2 seconds. So let's get busy and mark these seams so when we do go to UV layout or go to do the UV on it, we're not blessed with a lot of artifact and a lot of other loops and stuff that we have to fight through. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this top hinge here and come over here, and I'm just going to hit this little button here and hide it. I can toggle it on and off of view just by doing that, and that works pretty well. I'm going to go into this mode here, and I am going to mark some seams so that when we unwrap this this deal, it will unwrap very, very easily, and we'll have a nice flat projection when we go to apply our UV textures to it. Okay, so what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to, when I go to cut this, I'm going to cut it right along this line here. So I'm going to grab that loop there, and I'm going to hit Alt, and I've grabbed that loop, and it's going all the way up, but I want to omit. I'm going to go into line select. That might be a little easier. And by hitting shift, I'm going to deselect that line and deselect that line. And I'm going to come over here to the same side and deselect those 2 lines. And then I'm going to come over to here, and I'm going to click Mark Seam. And now when it goes to unwrap for UV texturing, it's just going to cut this mesh right along here so that it lays flat. Except this end here is going to cause quite a bit of problems. So what I'm going to do is come to this loop right here, which is our loop for the end of the button there. And I am going to take that and Alt click that, and then one of these lines right here I'm just going to uncheck it so that it still remains connected to the cylinder, but it's just going to lay out flat. So now I just hit there and hit Mark Scene, zoom over, and I'm going to do the same thing over here, zoom right in, grab that right there, and I want to do the same thing there, so I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to shift click that one there and mark the scene. And that should unwrap actually fairly nicely. So let's select everything by hitting A and then U to unwrap, and just unwrap. And let's switch over to the UV editing, and that really isn't too bad. It is, we can straighten that up, it's not a problem, but as you can see, I've got my cylinder right here and the two end caps, and we can straighten up these meshes at a later time on the UV side here, and it should look actually quite nicely when we go to apply the mesh to it. So let's head back on over to the default view, take one more look at that, and it looks pretty good, and I'm going to be happy with that. So now let's go ahead and hide that cylinder, and I'm going to take this now, click it, and I want to add a modifier to it as well, multi-resolution, and I'm just going to subdivide it one time. And you go, oh my god, that looks terrible. And again, we're going to fix that very, very easily, simply by going Control R, adding two loops, and then S, X, and sliding them out fairly close to the edge. Same thing over here, Control R, scroll up once on the mouse wheel, accept that, S sub Z, and scale that up to right about there. Now if we take a look at it now, it doesn't look too bad at all. Let's go ahead and shade that smooth, and you can see that now we have some kind of like little bending right in here, and the way we control that is, yes, with some edge loops. So we're going to hit Control R and put in two more edge loops, scale it, but we don't have, oops, on the x-axis, but we don't have to scale it very far, right about there, because that's where we started seeing that deformation. And the same thing over here, Control R and S to scale on the z-axis, and we'll move that right about there. Now when we take a look at it, we can see that does not look bad at all. It might be a little bit too thick, but I have a really quick, easy way of taking care of that. We have our kind of like little rounded edges so that nobody gets cut, and I'm very, very well satisfied with that. I'm not going to worry about the back. The sides look fine. We're just going to leave it alone at that. Let's go ahead and mark this for unwrapping as well. And this would have been easier if I'd done it before I had done the other, but I'm going to unwrap it on the back side. So that's where any of the seams are, so we don't see anything nasty there. So I'm going to hit Alt and collect that line and this line, and move over here and this line. And I'm not going to go any further than that. The reason being is I kind of want to open it up like a book. And so I'm going to go ahead and mark that seam. And these edges here I want to flay out as well. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit that line and mark seam. I'm going to come over here. Get that line and mark seam. I'm going to do that with all four corners. Hit that, whoops, hit that one and mark seam. And lastly, get up here. Get that corner and mark seam. Alright, that's all on the back side. Now if I open this up, if I hit, if I grab all of that, hit U to unwrap, go take a look at the UV editing, you can see how everything just unwrapped and everything's laying very, very flat. So I'm happy with that as well. And again, we can fix some of this distortion in here. I got a feeling some of that distortion might be due to the normals. Let's see here. Let's go back over to here. Well, here I'll hit, I think it's Control N, or is it Alt N? Well, I actually forgot. So let me just slip over to open up this window here, T, and we'll find it right here, recalculate normals, and try unwrapping it again. And you can see that straightened it out quite a bit. So again, that is laid out nicely for us, and I'm going to be happy with that. So by now going over to here, and we're going to go back to normal view. And I'm going to hide the bottom hinge. I'm going to hide the bottom hinge and bring back the top hinge. In fact, I think I'm upside down right now. Let me see. Yep. And now I'm just going to go into, select that, go, and I'm going to go ahead and mark these seams right now, why it's easy. Alt, that, and that, and that. It's much easier to do this when you're when you haven't got as many lines in there. And that, and that. Okay, then hit everything. U to unwrap. And if I run over to UV editing, you can see that well, U to unwrap, and I've got some bad normals in there. Oh, it would really help if I'd hit mark seam. So let me get into one thing. I can see that my normals are all kablooey, and I'm going to get in here and hit this line, that line, that line, that one there. Looks like I got that one already, and hit this one here and that one right there, and this time I'm going to remember to hit mark seam, select everything, U to unwrap, and you can see much better. Everything unwrapped quite nicely. So I'm satisfied with that, and now I can go ahead and go back into default view here. And I can see I've got a small problem here. I hit a wrong one, so I'm going to hit here and clear that seam. And I needed this one here. Mark that seam. And okay, now that looks much better. Now I've got it. Alright, now all I have to do is get back over to here. Yep, I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my modifier, multi-resolution, get into object mode so I can subdivide it once. I'm going to set the shading to smooth, and good to go. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Control R, add 2 loop cuts, S, X, and scale them right up close to the edge. Control R twice, and then S sub Z, and scale that right up to like there. And then I'm going to go Control R one more time here, scale those on the x-axis to right about there, and Control R twice, and scale that on the z-axis right up to about there. Then go in, and that looks pretty darn good. So if I go ahead and open up or show the rest of these two here, I've got my complete hinge set, and I'm very well satisfied with that. So now I'm going to take these items here, seeing that I'm pretty well done with them, and I'm going to move them to this layer over here, and I'm going to go to another item. Even though I'm not going to do much tweaking with the base, I'm going to go ahead and select it so that I can unwrap it easily. So I'm going to select the base, and I'm going to move it to this layer over here, and then I'm just going to jump up to that layer, and I'm going to fix it for unwrapping. This one is just going to be very easy to do. And basically what I want to do is I want to leave this part in the center here, and then I want to flip everything out in 4 different directions. So in order to do that, all I've got to do is go into edit mode here, come right into here, and Alt, and hit that seam right there, and go mark seam, and then just do the same thing over here, and mark seam. And now when I go to unwrap this, all 4 corners or all 4 sides should just flay right out, and that's done wrapping. It's going to look a little funny with the mirror modifier in there. When we apply the mirror modifier, you'll see it perfectly to where the center section had unwrapped or had just laid flat, and then all 4 sides will just flay right out and lay flat. So that'll make a nice unwrap. Okay, and we're going to put this away, move it back to that layer, and slip back down here, and I'm going to grab the lid, and I'm going to move it to the top there, and jump up there, and we're going to take care of the lid. The lid's going to take a little more to unwrap because, well, it just will. And then we're going to take a little bit of time and modify it so that it has nice clean edges on it. Right now they're sharp, and if you bumped your head on it, you'd get a nasty cut. So we're going to fix that so they're nice rounded edges. Okay, on the lid here, what I kind of got planned here is just about the same thing I did with the base, and that's that I'm going to take this and I'm going to flay it all out so that this portion right here will lay flat, and then all four of these edges will just pop on out. And I think what I'm going to do is I am going to apply the mirror modifier now so that I've got a solid mesh that I'm working with. And now it's just one big mesh here. And I'm going to go ahead and by Alt and click that, and you can see it's marked it all the way to the other side. I'm going to move over here and do the same thing. Hit that one and mark it all the way to the other side. Mark that one and go ahead and mark that one. Now when I unwrap this, this should all stay intact and all four edges will flay out, except that we have a problem on the inside. The inside will just kind of really deform and just create a mess. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and mark the seams that I've got so far, and I'm going to take these four edges in here, and let me see, Alt, I'm going to grab all of these here, 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 move this over, and here, and I'm going to mark that seam. Now what's going to happen is everything's going to flay out, just like I said, and then the center island on the inside is going to be kind of like a little separate object. And so let's see if that works. I'm going to go ahead here and U to unwrap. I'm going to go over here to UV editing, and you can see that it's got a bunch of weird shapes in there, and the reason being is our normals have not been recalculated. So I got some faces, I got some things facing in and some other things facing out. So what we're going to do is, with everything selected, we're going to come over here and recalculate the normals so all of the faces are facing the same direction. Hit U to unwrap, and you can see everything just straightened right up. Everything looks real good. Here's my top right here. It's flayed out in four directions, and then this right in here is this island right here, which is separate all by itself, and that looks very, very good. So let's move over back to my default screen here, and if I will go ahead and do my multi-resolution modifier, slip into mode here and hit subdivide, you can see everything goes kablooey. And if I go ahead and shade it smooth, it looks smoother, but it's still kablooey. So let's straighten it up, and we're going to do it the same way as with loop cuts. So I'm going to hit go into edit mode. I'm going to add a loop cut here by going Control R. Actually, let's take this loop right here. Let's select this loop, Control R, and oops, let's Alt R. There we go. Now I've got the whole thing, and I'm going to delete that edge. and it looks like I lost quite a bit here, but all it can be put right back in very, very quickly. I'm going to hit this edge here. Let me see, I've got a vertex in there. So let me go into vertex mode. And this is actually going to create quite a bit of work, so I'm just going to step back and leave that line in there. So I'm just going to Control Z back to where I was before and put that right back in there. It's really not going to create that much more work. So I'm going to go Control R, add one loop, and move it over to G on X, and move it to right about there, I think. Let me check the bottom to make sure it didn't get into. Now that all looks fairly clean, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that like that. I'm going to pop over here and do the same thing, Control R, and slide it on over to right about there. I'm going to take a look on the bottom to make sure I haven't intersected these lines in here, and that all looks pretty good. So now I'm going to hit Control R, and this time I can put in two loops, and then S to scale them out on the Y-axis this time, and move those over to right about there, I think. Let's look at the bottom, and I haven't intersected anything. In fact, I could almost go just a little bit further. So let me kind of zoom in here. S sub Y, and scale them right about to, I think, there. And alright, looking good, looking good. So now if I hit here, that's looking much, much better. So if I go Control R, put in two loops, scale them out to on the Y-axis to right about here, that should take care of that other deformation that you saw in there, and it looks pretty flat from here to here. So I've just got kind of a rounded edge there, which is what I wanted. So now let me come over here, go back into edit mode, Control R, and slide that edge to right about there. Control R, and slide that edge to right about over there, and hit Tab to check my work, and I got a nice flat surface with a nice rounded edge. It's almost a little bit too round, but that's because we need to do the same thing on the sides here. So we're going to hit Control R and put in two loops, and then S to scale them out on the Z-axis to right about there. S and Z just made, whoops, a little bit too fast there. If you hold down the Shift key, it'll kind of constrain it and slow it down. And then I'm just going to add Control R, two more loops, and scale them out just slightly on the Z-axis. And if I go into Tab, that looks pretty good. That's a nice rounded edge, and it doesn't look too sharp at all. We need to, this will kind of bevel out a little bit, so I'm going to hit Control R and just put in two loop cuts and call it a day. Now I need to do the same thing for the inside. I'm going to come to this edge over here and hit Control R and put in two loop cuts, and then S and Z to scale them close to that edge. S and Z, scale them right up, and you can even see it you can even see it going from that real sharp round to a much sharper round. And then Control R, add in 2 more loops, and then S and Z to scale those, and to right about there, and that should work just dandy. Now we just have our inside here. Now we've added some loops already. Let's just hit Tab. When I added loops to the outside, they kind of transferred to the inside here. So let's take a look, and we'll just hit Tab. And actually that doesn't look too bad. It looks like it cleaned right up. So we are pretty well done. In fact, we are done with our lid. Our lid is just perfect the way that it is. There will be no further modeling on it, and we can move straight on over to our turntable. So let's go ahead and move this to the other layer. Whoops, there we go. Whoops, M, and move that over to the other label. We're going to slip over here. Now we can't reach our turntable, but if we just take the lid and take the little eye and click it, it'll get out of our way temporarily. We can then move this to the first layer here, and we can take our lid and pop it right back in, go right over to here, and we have a very weird looking turntable. First thing I want to do is go ahead and mark the seams on it. And so let's just go into this view here, and I'm going to mark this bottom here because that's going to be the least visible to what I got. And what I want to do is I want to mark the seam here so that it'll separate the top from the bottom, and we'll do that by hitting Alt, hit that, and then I'm going to Shift and take one of these and undo it, because when it opens up I want it to open up like 2 halves and not 2 separate units. So I'm going to mark that seam. Now I'm going to come in here, and I am going to separate this part here. Well, let's just unwrap this and I'll show you what I mean here. If I hit All and then U to unwrap, we'll slip over to UV editing, and you can see again we have some weird deformation, and that's because our normals aren't calculated correctly. So with everything right here selected, we're going to hit recalculate the normals, and then U to unwrap, and instantly you can see what I've got. I've got our 2 discs joined at one side. This is the bottom, and here's your top, and you can see that other little area kind of flayed out like that. And so that'll work quite nicely. So the only other thing we have to do now is, if we look at the bottom, I'm not going to worry too much about the bottom because the bottom is just basically that cylinder and it's never going to be visible. However, the top, we keep going in and in and in, and you can see all these little vertexes right here at the very, very top, just kind of getting in more and more. And I'd like to control that a little better by unwrapping that a little nicer. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to collapse this down. We'll just work in this screen here, and I'm going to zoom way in, get into this mode here, and I'm going to choose this line right here, Alt, and click like that. I'm going to mark that seam by hitting T and opening up the toolbar there and scrolling on down till I find it, and there we go. We're going to mark that seam. Now that's going to be a separate object, and I want to detach it, and then I want it to open up right along the side here. So I'm going to hit this one right here, and now I want to hit one that goes all the way to the center. If I hit this one, it would only go up to there, but I want to hit that center. So I'll then select this one, this one, this one, and this one. And apologies for my granddaughter, who is all excited over some cartoon on the TV. And I'm going to mark that seam. And now now this should open up and just flay right on out. So if I select everything and now unwrap, you can see that's exactly what I got. This is now my top portion here, and if we zoom way in over here, you can see the spindle that is completely opened up. And that little bit of deformation up there, stretching and whatever, isn't going to amount to anything. So that is going to be a successful unwrap for me. So I'm going to go back over now to my default screen, and I'm going to be satisfied with that unwrapping. So now if I add a modifier to it, and let's go into Object View, I'm going to, well, first of all, let's go ahead and shade it smooth. And you can see it's gotten a little weird looking, but that again will straighten up as well. If I go into Multi-Resolution and subdivide it once and twice, you can see I got a nice round shape. Of course, it's a little flat right now, but again, that's because when the multi-resolution came in, it kind of rounded everything to the point where it just turned it into a pancake. But there again, it's easy to fix, and you guessed it, we're going to do it with edge loops. There's one other problem, and that's if we go ahead and slip here, it looks like this is got like a little tit coming out of it, and it just kind of comes right out of this platter. And now these are two separate objects that are kind of put together. In actuality, if we're going to build a real platter and disc or spindle, they'd make the spindle and then they'd attach some grommets and whatever and then slip this on top of it, so this disc on top of it, so that it's actually two pieces that are put together to make one manufactured piece. And so we want to kind of emulate that as well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to come in here and we're going to add two edge loops to begin with. So we're going to go Control R, put in 2, and we're going to S to scale and scale them right out, and that's not going to work that way because it's trying to scale on the, well, it's just not going to work. It's trying to scale from that median point there. So we have to do these individually. So Control R, or Alt and right click, we're going to grab that, and then we're going to S and just scale that out to the edge right about there. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Grab that loop and we're going to scale that right in till we get right to close to there. Now the other thing we want to do now, and if I hit Control, well, let's do that to the bottom as well. Control R, and then scale that right on out close to the edge. There we go. And Control R, and scale that into right about there. That's going to be about the major amount of work that we're going to do in the bottom. I just wanted to straighten that up. And then we're going to take and just put in Control R, 2 edge loops in here, and whoops, well, I put in 3, and I'm just scroll that back, and then S to scale them up slightly on the Z axis, constrain it to the Z to right about there. That'll round those edges out, and then Control R, I'll just add in one more edge loop there and defold it to the center. Now if I hit Tab, you can see that that looks pretty good for the platter, except that we need to work on the center now, and we're going to do that right now. We're going to come in here, get right up close, and I'm going to take and grab that loop cut right there, and I'm going to grab it and move it down on the z-axis just about that far. Just sink her right in there. Then I'm going to grab this loop and scale it inwards to where I'm just about touching, but not quite. I don't want to intersect. I don't want to go inside of it. I just want to kind of get that close to it, so that we're right up on the other, out the spindle. Then I'm going to make another loop cut here. Control R, and then scale, whoops, S to scale that in to right about there, and let's see how that looks now. Not too bad, not too bad. So I've got my platter, and it looks as though that spindle is coming out, that it's another object, and it's all kind of put together, and I'm going to be happy with that for right now, because quite frankly most of the time there's going to be a record on top of it. You're probably not even going to see that except when the record flies off at the end, when it goes to morph into a laptop computer. So I am happy with that, and we're going to hold on just one moment, please. Well, actually, looking at the time, we've used quite a bit of time, and so I'm just going to go ahead and stop right there. And next time, we're going to proceed on to the base, and we're going to take the base and finish modeling it. It's going to take pretty much the entire 45 minutes to an hour to do it. We're going to cut in the speakers, and everything will look pretty darn cool, and we're going to have most of our major objects done. We need to make a bracket, and we also need to make a the stylus and the stylus arm, which I'm just now finished with my ideas on modeling it, and so it won't look as hokey as the one that I had made before. As before, a PDF version of this modeling tutorial is available on my website for download, as well as the blend file at the state of which I've completed right here, so that you can use it as a guide. In fact, you can just use it if you want. If you do use it as a model, I just ask that you refer it back to me at just kind of give me credit for what I've done and what I've given you, and that's all I ask, and that's all I deserve. So until then, this is Hans Eriksson again with cgboomer.com, and happy blending.